This is the Turf Zone Podcast, your central information and news hub, bringing together professionals from turf associations across multiple states to share things to help you in your business. Brought to you in partnership with our friends at the Maryland Turfgrass Council. This episode is sponsored in part by Sod, world-class service on demand. Visit us online at www.buysod.com. Now, let's get in the zone.
Welcome to the Turf Zone. In this episode, we feature an article titled A Tale of Two Turfs, written by Arthur Eddy, ASLA, Lead AP. As a synthetic turf maintenance provider, we see a lot of synthetic turf fields. We've been monitoring fields to try and get an understanding of why the same field in different locations has two vastly different life cycles. We happen to maintain two turfs designed and installed by the same exact parties, had the same exact turf system produced by the same manufacturer, but had dramatically different results. The systems were a pretty standard 2.5-inch monofilament with sand and rubber infill. Both fields were relatively old at 11 years old. Field A had limited fiber breakdown, consistent infill depth of 41 millimeters, and averaged around 125 Gmax. Field B had an increased fiber breakdown, consistent infill depth of 28 millimeters, and average around 135 Gmax. If you utilize the standard of care of 165 Gmax by the ASTM F355 method, the Gmax was mid-range and not driving a major concern. Both fields had a fairly limited maintenance schedule. The major difference between the two fields was infill depth and the breakdown of fiber in Field B. We investigated to find out why there was dramatic difference in wear on the field, even though these two fields were generally the same. It was evidence that there were two major differences. 1. Field A was locked when not in use. 2. Field B had athletic field lights. The impact of the field lighting on Field B was increased hours of use, increased use due to constant field accessibility related to no locked gates. Seeing that maintenance practices were limited on Field B, the wear and breakdown of fiber on Field B was increasing exponentially. In a good rainstorm, fiber on Field B was piling up along the sidelines. Does that mean that if a field is used extensively, the length of life will decrease? While heavy use does impact a surface and can limit the life of a surface, like anything, the increased use requires more attention and frequency. Field B could have easily been more in line with Field A had the infill been lifted and decompacted on a regular basis. Added infill to those high-use areas and proper leveling would have reduced the increased wear on the fiber. One thing that was apparent in this comparison on both fields was that the primary United States standard of testing for Gmax was not indicative of the major problems occurring on the field. Field B had a compacted infill from high use and less infill from what would require us to look beyond Gmax. We also knew that the maintenance practice we were going to decompact the field could potentially negatively impact on Gmax. So why decompact? When we looked beyond Gmax, we could see a larger problem. We viewed vertical deformation. The field was well below the 6 millimeter to 11 millimeter range. This means that the surface was firm, and as a maintenance practice, we had to get into the rubber and lift that rubber to break it up. Additionally, the rotation resistance on the field was well below the 25 nanometers to 50 nanometer range. The moral of the story of the Tale of Two Turfs is that maintenance is critical, and the practice of maintenance should reflect the amount of use your field receives. Tracking hours of use can help to formulate an appropriate program for ensuring the field is receiving the most appropriate maintenance practices. Unlike natural grass, once the fiber of synthetic turf break down, there are a limited number of ways to bring it back, and most are impactful on performance of the field. Lastly, as a sports turf manager who is managing a synthetic turf field, Exploration beyond the GMEX test is essential to ensure that the field is safe and performing to its optimal value. Arthur Eddy is CEO of Replay Maintenance in East Greenwich, Rhode Island. Connect with Art at AEDDY at replaymaintenanceusa.com or 877-641-1819. For all resources associated with this article, check out our show notes. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also visit us at theturfzone.com.
You've been listening to The Turf Zone. Thank you to our sponsors, including Buy Sod, world-class service on demand. Visit us online at www.buysod.com. For more episodes of The Turf Zone, visit theturfzone.com and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast app.